This will be recorded. So if there is anything about that that makes you uncomfortable, please do feel free to turn off your video camera so your face is not shown on the screen, and or you can change your name in your little box to something humorous, Miss Jean, maybe, after we talked about that, whatever you would like. But it will be recorded because I think this will be a valuable tool as people make decisions in the future about joining a clinical trial, participating in a clinical trial. I would also like to ask you to give us feedback. We are going to send you a survey after this is over. And now that you've heard me say that, you know that it's not just some computer generated survey. We actually wrote the questions up and we're thoughtful about them and really want to hear your answers. You can tell us we're great. You can tell us we're terrible. You can give us ideas for future town halls. Be specific on the questions. We want this to be a great tool for you. I would also like to introduce the development directors at ALS TDI, many of whom will also be reaching out to you for follow-up after this to see if you have any questions. We have Terry Handler, wave your arms. Great. Erin Stevens, you're not in my little primary box, but I bet you're waving your arms. And Claire Reach. Claire, are you there? I think she has the same background as I do, so we're kind of easy to find. So these are your contacts at ALS TDI. They will reach out to you, but you can also reach out to them. Could somebody from ALS TDI please put all of our email addresses, the development directors, into the chat so that everybody can access them for me at some point today? That would be terrific. Okay, now in a minute I am going to turn it over to John, but first the people I really want to thank right now are those that are going to be talking to you today about the experiences they've had in the clinical trial. You'll meet each one of them separately, but Sandy Morris, Sherry Schoon, Troy Fields, Eric Chung, Jay Payne, thank you not only for being here and sharing your stories and helping the rest of the community understand what your experience was like, but thank you for participating in the science and helping us get to an answer as quickly as we possibly can. Truly grateful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and I'm going to advance my slide. Am I? Let's try this. Why did this work a minute ago? There we are. There's me and John. Okay, this is what we're going to be doing. John, would you like me to go to the next slide, or you want me to stay here?
The next slide would be great.
Okay. All right. You just like say hit it, Carol, or whatever you want.
Will do. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction to who we are. Then we'll let our guest speakers take things over. And we are the world's most comprehensive drug discovery lab focused only on ALS. We only study ALS. Our scientists are not working on any other diseases. We are 100% focused on ALS, and our lab encompasses all areas of ALS research and drug discovery under one roof, including preclinical, clinical, and translational research, which essentially means we try and learn about how ALS works. We try and find things that might work as drugs and treatments for ALS, and we try and find out if those treatments will work, all under one roof. We were the first nonprofit biotech company in the world, and we are still the largest in the world. We were founded in 1999 by the family of Stephen Haywood, who was diagnosed with ALS at the age of 29. His family were engineers, some of whom were trained at MIT, and they decided to do something about it when they were told that there were no treatments for his disease. So we were founded in a basement in Newton, Massachusetts, and 20 years later, we have over 30 scientists in our lab in Cambridge focused only on ALS. If you see the two photos down there at the bottom of the screen, on the left, that is the basement where we were founded. That's Stephen in orange, and sadly, he passed away in 2006. But if you look at the photo on the right, that's our lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts today. And in the middle is Stephen's son. So this is a multi-generational fight, and we are still fighting. And if you could go to the next slide, Carol. And we are leaders in ALS research, and we continue to find new ways to innovate. Just a few things that we've done recently. We've helped create the world's first ALS precision medicine program, in which we partner with people with ALS all over the world to get data about their disease progression, and also get biological samples in order to better understand ALS and make clinical trials more efficient. We also make this data available to participants so they can track their own disease progression better. So that's something you can sign up and participate in, and we'll have more information about that later in the presentation. And we've tested over 400 drugs in animal models of ALS, which is more than any other research lab or any other ALS research lab in the world. And we are the first nonprofit biotech company in any disease to invent a drug called AT-1501 and advance it from our lab into clinical trials. And it is now in a phase 2 clinical trial. And with that, I will hand it back to Carol.
Thank you, John. Okay. Our conversation is going to be around what it is like to participate in an ALS clinical trial. We are going to hear from these guys on what their experiences were like, any obstacles they had to site visits, you know, all of it. And I think that they would agree that any and all types of questions are welcome. We, like I said, want to demystify this process. We want to enroll clinical trials so we can get to an answer. So let's make sure that everybody is comfortable with what it feels like to do just that. So first up is Sandy Morris. Sandy, are you there?
I am here.
There is Sandy. Sandy participated in Brainstorm's Neurone trial. And she is going to tell us a little bit about what that was like. Now, as you see also on the slide, Sandy participated in the phase 2. That's correct, right, Sandy?
Nope, phase 3.
Oh, phase 3, so incorrect. So
sorry.
I think, as everybody probably knows, we will hopefully be hearing from Brainstorm at the end of the year on the results from the phase 3 trial. So yep. Sandy, what was it like?
It was an honor. Let me start with that. It was amazing. I felt like I won the lottery to be able to get in. It was a brutal trial. Let's also be honest about that. It was very invasive. It was a bone marrow aspiration, 3 spinal injections, 4 lumbar punctures with a 50% chance of having saline solution up my back. If the drug worked for me, and I thought it did, I had no ability to get it afterwards. So no open label extension, certainly no expanded access, and it had a 3-month run-in period. But even with everything I just outlined for you, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I really feel like so many of the ALS patients that I speak to are more than willing to be involved in clinical trials, because that's what we have. In this brutal, disastrous disease, clinical trials, and then hopefully someday expanded access, is the only way that we're going to have investigational therapies in our body. And I can tell you this straight up. I want to die with investigational therapies in my body. I want to die trying. And most of us do. So I have to say that it was pretty flawless for me. The bone marrow aspiration was fine. I went to sleep for a few minutes and woke up, no big deal. I did the spinal injections with no trouble whatsoever. Stayed one night in the hospital each time. I had a spinal headache twice after 2 of the lumbar punctures, which is fine. That's something you sign up for. And the staff that I worked with at CPMC in San Francisco were more than amazing. So it was a class act through and through, but just a very invasive study for, you know, again, 50% placebo. 50% odds in anything in life is no fun. But I'm very, very grateful I was a part of it. I truly believe that it helped my body. I think my body likes stem cells. I have since flown to Korea for stem cells to try to get something like it 4 different times. So I'll end where I began, and that is that it was an honor to be a clinical trial participant in Brainstorm.
Oh, Sandy, you know, I think it's, I hate what you went through. I'm grateful you went through it. You know, I think we all focus so much on, yay, Brainstorm, a phase 3, yay, we want the answers. We don't really think about the fact that you went through pain, and that you did all of this again, like you said, with the risk of it being, you know, sham surgeries. So thank you.
Yep.
Can you tell a little bit of the story, Sandy, about how you chose that trial and what the chronology was? So you said to your doctor, I want to be in this trial, and then what happened? Or if that's even how it started.
Yeah, nope, you're exactly right. I kind of knew I had ALS before I was diagnosed. So I kind of already began that journey just to see, like, truly, is there nothing out here? So I'd already started to research clinical trials. And one of my best friends said, if you need, where we need to get you is into a clinical trial, because they'll give you the drug afterwards. And now you'll be on a groundbreaking drug when everybody else will be on other drugs that are, you know, 50 years old. And so I ran, not walked, towards this trial with everything I had. And I was lucky enough to have a neurologist that's very good. And she said, I think this would be a great trial for you. And I was there. I was diagnosed in January, and I was already talking to them in February. Now, the problem was that there was a run-in period of 3 months. And then the secondary problem to that was...
Can you explain what that is, Sandy?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's an observation period to watch you demise so that they can see what kind of a progressor you are, and then see if their drug makes a difference in if you're responding to it better. So when I started this trial, I was on a cane. When I actually got the first spinal injection, due to delays in the manufacturing part of it, I was in a wheelchair. So the observation period feels very important for science and feels very inhumane if you're a human. So basically, stem cells is not an easy clinical trial. So what I am discussing is not the norm. Lots of times it's pills or it's something you drink, but stem cells is expensive, and stem cells are way more complex than just an average clinical trial. So I do want to make sure that I'm giving that the right amount of respect in here too. But I was able to join quickly. I had kind of a little hiccup in there that was interesting. My family and I went with me, accompanied me to one of the visits in which they said, we're sorry you're not part of the trial anymore because you have hepatitis C. And all of our jaws probably hit the floor at the same time. And I said, I don't, have hepatitis C. There's no way for me to have hepatitis C. So I actually had to go back and investigate, because they had given me IVIGs for MMN, hoping I had MMN. And so I had to go back and really prove with science that when you do an IVIG, you then have been like, that's part of maybe what you were given in your infusions. And so we had to clear that out. And so I lost another month there. But the
Whoa.
reason I'm bringing up that experience is only for this. We hang our hearts on these clinical trials. We believe with everything we are that they're going to work for us. And I know we're not supposed to. And I know it's supposed to be altruistic. But that's not human nature. So you have to believe that there's something there for you. And you're holding on to a little hope. And I will never forget that day, looking in my doctor's eyes when he said, "You're out of the trial," and how that felt. And that's where I fight so hard for expanded access, because I don't want anybody to have the feeling that I had that day, that they were not allowed to be in the trial, that they had such great hope would work for them.
Oh God, Sandy, I didn't know that.
I've never told that story out loud.
Thank you for telling it. Thank you for sharing it. And I think it illustrates what I would assume to be a very important point, which is, you know, you need to advocate for yourself to get yourself into a trial if that's what you want. Now, it sounds to me, Sandy, like you were lucky enough that the site for Neurone was relatively local to you, if not the hospital you were already working with.
Interesting. So I live by Lake Tahoe, California, and they're in San Francisco. So it was 6 hours round trip. And when you think about a clinical trial, and this is why we've set up the ratings that we have over in IMALS,
Yep.
you have to think that every time a person goes to that trial, they are going there with a caregiver. But we can't get ourselves everywhere like we used to in most cases. And so you're taking 2 and 3 people, out of the day to get you to a clinical trial, happily and with joy, but that's what you're doing. There was one day, we were in the biggest winter, second biggest winter that we've all seen around here in years. And I was supposed to go in. It was for a lumbar puncture, so it wasn't for an injection, but I was supposed to get in. And I did not want to be kicked out of this trial. I wanted to be the perfect participant. And one night, a huge storm was going on. And my husband and I had to take the back roads to get, to try to get to San Francisco in time. And one of our windshield wipers broke. So we took the one off the passenger and put it on his side and drove for, I think it was 9 hours.
Oh my God.
We kind of got there just in time because all the roads had closed and we were on back roads. But that's the part that people don't realize either, is what it takes to get to these trials. And again, I probably could have just called in and said, I can't make it, I'm in a big, huge storm. But I wanted everything to go really well and move this trial along. And that's really what so many of us do in these trials. We put our heart and our soul and our dedication into these trials.
I get it. You're like, dear God, I don't want to break the teeniest, weeniest rule. I want
That's right. Don't kick
this
me out.
treatment.
Don't kick me out.
But so when they came to you and said you had hepatitis B, you had to do the work yourself to prove that you did not, right? Because it was your doctor who was saying, yes, you do, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And then what I found out is I went back and I told my other doctor, not my clinical trial doctor, but my other doctor, and I said, I think you told me this happened to one of your patients before. And I think it was hepatitis C. And she said, oh my God, give me all your findings. Let's figure this out. I had to do that all on my own. They called me several times thereafter and said, this has happened again. But again, it was IVIGs that often we get treated with in the grand hope that we have MMN and not ALS.
Yeah.
You always have to be your own advocate. You have to fight for yourself in this disease almost daily.
And that's a lot of work, and I'm sorry you have to do that.
The good news is I probably enjoy it.
Well, that's you. You are kind of a crazy person.
It's a true story.
Sandy referenced everybody a wonderful resource that I want to make sure everyone knows about, and that is the Signals dashboard at IMALS. She referenced a rating where there is a list of clinical trials and a rating for patient centricity. So you can check that out as well. And any of the development directors that you saw on the call, myself included, if you want to look at that resource and you want us to help you walk you through it, we are happy to do that. There's also a database of all of the clinical trials in ALS, both interventional and observational, worldwide on our website as well. So, and again, we can help you with all of this because the fact that you have to work this hard to help advance the science for a treatment that will end this disease is something that breaks my heart. So let us help you however we can. Okay, we're gonna open it up for a couple of questions for Sandy now, and then we can save some at the end. If there is someone who would like to ask Sandy a question, feel free to unmute yourself. If two of you start talking at the same time, I'll pick whichever one of you I like the best.
I have a question.
Great. Who is that?
Nina.
All right, Nina.
So I have had very poor experience getting into a trial because I keep not qualifying. They have kind of narrow windows. First, I wasn't advanced enough, and now I've had it too long. And even though I have a slow progression, I'm in year 5, and most trials want people who got it earlier. So when you say that you should advocate for a trial, does that mean that if you really push, you can get in even though you don't meet the parameters?
No, sorry. I don't want to set that. Got a wish, right? A wish. No, it means advocating for yourself as far as like knowing, where you want to be, what you want to do. If you are not eligible for a trial, unfortunately, if the criteria really hasn't been met, the only thing we can do is expanded access. And that's what we work on as a team over at IMALS, but also you can do it as a single patient. But no, I just mean advocating for yourself and like saying, in so much of what we do over here is that we're saying out loud, we're not animals. We're happy to be in your science experiment. We are happy to be your science experiment overall, but treat us like humans and let us have, humane and efficient clinical trials that we want to be joining in. And that's what we fought for. That's the advocacy of making sure the FDA guidance document was changed so that then the drug sponsors could change their trial design to something that we could join and all respect ourselves in the morning. And so when I say advocate, I just mean like if there is a drug that you feel like you want, like you're looking at a clinical trial and you're talking to your doctor about it, and maybe it's Nudextra or maybe it's a Budalast or whatever, really advocate for yourself in telling your doctor, why you think that that is something that might work for your kind of ALS. And I just mean like, and when I say advocate, you have to be educated on it all. You have to know what you're bringing forward. It can't be like that 3 people told you about it and you want it. Really go and do your homework and then have those sophisticated conversations with the experts and listen to what they have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And thank you, Nina. Does anyone else have one more question before we move on to the next experience for now? Okay, great. We're going to go to you, Sherry. Sherry, it looks like Shun is your maiden name and Levisimondin is now your married name, the way this is written. And I think do we have your study title and your phase correct? I think you were a phase 2, right? I think we reversed maybe you and Sandy.
I think it was a phase 3 for
Okay.
mine. Yes.
So Sandy, Sherry, can you start by just telling a little bit of your ALS story too? Introduce yourself a little to people. That'd be great.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm Sherry. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I am 52. I was diagnosed at 49. I grew up in Kalamazoo, and there's a cluster of us. I have a friend that lived across the street from me. Her name is Sherry. We graduated from high school together. She also has ALS.
Stop it right now.
Yes. She's much further along than me, advanced. I'm actually going to see her tomorrow, but there was a third person we found in our neighborhood also. So my ALS started in my finger, and I just thought, oh, it's just a tendon issue. Took about 1.5 years to get diagnosed. Totally wasn't expecting it at all. Blew me out of the water. I went to University of Michigan to get a second opinion. I was super scared, so I think I just wanted to seek out that opinion, and then I ended up staying with U of M for now, for my care. And when I went for my clinic appointments, they would always share what trials would be available for me and what possibly I could qualify for. So about 1.5 years ago, this trial was presented to me, and I thought, if I can qualify, like Sandy said, this is all we have, and sure, let's give it a try. I had to qualify with my heart rate had to be a certain level. My breathing had to be between 60 and 90%. My symptoms had to be between 12 and 48 months. And I could not have been on a breathing machine to do this. So it was not invasive at all, besides getting some blood draws and doing like an EKG and some breathing tests. It was fine. And then it was a pill that I would take every evening. And then once the study was done, I increased the pill to 2 pills. I think I started that in March. So when I first started, I had to make trips to Ann Arbor more frequently. It's about a 2-hour drive, and my son goes to school there. So that was a plus. I could see him at the same time. I love U of M staff. They were great. Once COVID hit, we could do some things on Zoom. They were very accommodating. I think the thing that was really hard, about a month ago, I got an email from my doctor at U of M, who I adore, but he was just saying it looks like this trial is not showing benefits for ALS patients. I was not surprised. I'm supposed to be a slow progressor, and definitely have had unexpected progression of symptoms since I've been on the trial. So I can definitely relate to what Sandy said. I was very surprised at how I felt when I got that email. I was very sad. I was angry. I was glad I had some time to process that information. And so when I heard that I was to stop the medication a few weeks later, I was better able to handle that information. It was really, really hard to hear it's not working. And then I said, okay, what about the platform trial? I want to do something else. And they said, nope, you don't qualify for that now because your symptoms have been over 3 years. So I'm left now with nothing. And that's just really, really hard when you're hopeful.
I bet. Sherry, did you just say that you felt like your symptoms got worse while you were in the trial at a faster rate than you had been progressing? Did you say that?
Yes, I guess I'm just surprised at the rate of progression for me over the past year. Yes, while I've been on the trial, whether that has anything to do with the drug, I don't know. Maybe that was just how my body's going to progress. But
that has to be, that's really almost a moral dilemma, right? That everybody could go through in a clinical trial where you feel like you may be getting worse, but you want to do, as Sandy put it, the altruistic thing and follow through on the science so that we get the answer not just for you, but for everybody.
Yeah, like Sandy said, I want to be the perfect patient.
Yeah.
And, they've said that about me. They said, you're just the ideal person to do a trial because I'm very, was responsible to do everything asked of me. So really hard to see it end and that it didn't show benefits and, left with nothing to try right now.
I am sorry about that, and I wish there was something we could give you that you didn't even have to try that would help. And I hope it tasted like a margarita. That's what I would want for everybody.
At least it wasn't super invasive. It was pretty low key. I got to drive to a fun city. It was.
You got to see your son.
Yeah, exactly. So.
But you didn't reap a benefit. And, and really everybody needs to keep that story in mind because most drugs do not make it.
Right.
So more often than not, drugs fail at clinical trial, and so you won't see a benefit. But I did want to remind everybody, it's not a plug because we don't make any money off it, but I do want to remind everybody about a resource that could help Sherry in exactly the scenario you talked about where you don't know, would I have progressed at this rate and in this manner if I hadn't been in the trial? Join the precision medicine program. I'm saying that to you as though you guys are my sisters, my brothers, my best friends, my mother's cousin. If you are part of the PMP, it doesn't cost you anything, you can do it from home. The scientists get a baseline trajectory of your disease progression, and then any intervention along the way, you can see the change in that trajectory and make medical decisions based on data. So it can be very, very helpful but it's not a clinical trial, but it has that similar thing where there is a benefit, for the person living with ALS now. But the program is really designed to eventually identify the subsets of ALS so that we can know what subsets of patients might respond to certain drugs. So if you are on this call and you are considering participating in a clinical trial, all of the people who waved their arms will help make sure that you can find the precision medicine program at als.net, which just by me saying that, you can find it. If it were me, I would do that right now. Get the data so that you can know if something's helping you or not. Okay, enough about me, Sherry.
Carol.
Yeah.
This is Erin. I just wanted to pipe up because something that Sherry said also really hit a chord with me that I find really important for people to know. And that was that, Sherry, you were explaining that you were awesome and so positive and so nice that you participated in this trial, but you used that time to participate in a trial that may or may not have worked for you. And now that time has passed, it's been too long. So that was your shot at a trial, and now your time has come where you're too long into your diagnosis, which is incredibly frustrating that you only got that one opportunity, and that's right. The that you ended up going on. So I think that choosing what clinical trial or what's available to you at the right time is also something to kind of be aware of, that sometimes you only have the time frame to try one clinical trial.
Yeah, how many shots on goal do you get? It's really true, Erin, and you can, and everybody can look at the trials that are available and enrolling now and any that are soon to open. But very few are short, I mean, because these are experiments to look at the progression of ALS and they require time. As frustrating, I can talk about all of this very easily because I don't have ALS. My sister doesn't have ALS and my mother doesn't have ALS. But you know what? There are a lot of people on here who are my friends, like Sandy, and makes me freaking crazy. So I can only, God bless you for being so nice about it, Sherry. It's got to be incredibly frustrating.
You know what's hard too is I think everyone's personality is different, and I totally agree with what Erin said. But I think for me, it can get so overwhelming that maybe I didn't look into the trial as much as I could have. Sometimes I feel like I just shut down because the diagnosis is just crazy. So,
Yeah.
I almost need like an advocate saying, try this, try that. I have a great supportive husband, but he's trying to work full time. It just, I wish I had someone like, don't try that one, do this one. But
yep, I get that. And I think the point there then too is find other people to talk these through with, be it, the folks that are on this call, Sherry, Sandy, Eric, Jay, Troy, any of us at ALS TDI, the people at I Am ALS. None of us are going to say to you, you should do this trial over that trial. We will never say that. But at least those of us at TDI who have access to really, really super smart scientists can help walk you through the science, at least on the preclinical side that got the drugs there. So we can, I think your point is so well taken, Sherry. You were so overwhelmed. You were just like, give me what's in front of me. I can't do any more.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, if you think it's going to work, my very smart doctor at U of M, who I love, okay, I'm going to try it. So, I think I depended too on them to tell me, yeah, this is showing some positive results. We think you could qualify. And I went for it.
That's totally fair, by the way.
Yeah.
No, but what you're saying, Erin, I didn't even think about that. Like, it's just a learning curve for sure.
And Sherry, I hope you felt at the end, even though the drug didn't necessarily move forward, that again, on the altruism side, you got it to that point.
Yes.
So that there will be somebody else who will try another drug.
Yes.
Instead. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any questions for Sherry? All right. And you guys are all checking chat, right? To make sure there aren't any questions coming through. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, we're going to move on to Troy Fields. This is a little bit different because Troy was in an observational study where they longitudinally collected spinal fluid and blood samples to look for potential biomarkers in ALS. And hopefully everybody understands the importance of identifying a potential biomarker for ALS. It would certainly help us make these trials shorter, right? If we didn't have to look for long-term, slowing of progression, but could look, at a blood sample or spinal fluid and run a test and find out through a biomarker if a drug is working or not. So there's, that would be really exciting. Troy, you there?
I'm here. Ready.
You're there. Hello. Troy's in Newport, Rhode Island, kinda.
Well, Tampa, Florida.
At least
but
virtually.
Virtually in Newport, Rhode Island. That's right.
Troy, will you give a little bit of your background in history?
Sure. So I think like most folks, my journey is pretty typical. It's 11 months to diagnosis. Was finally confirmed June 2018. In the course of my diagnosis, they actually had discovered kidney cancer. And so I actually had to put a pause, if you will, in my ALS diagnosis process so that they can take my right kidney out.
Dear Lord.
I didn't really think, yeah, it's like, stage 3 kidney cancer while trying to figure out an ALS diagnosis. It was kind of I think
Holy
somebody
cow,
just was
Troy.
trying to, was really trying to do me in. But anyway, when I was diagnosed in June, I think as most, folks, you go through that process where you're, sort of lost and unsure as to what to do. You want to do something. At the end of the day, I think that's that urge to fight. I was fortunate that just a month after my diagnosis, I was able to get in with my ALS clinic visits, which happened to be at Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. So July, I was my first ALS clinic appointment. As I sat through with the neurologist, one of the first things that we discussed was trials and my willingness to conduct trials or be part of the trials, I should say. And as they started to review the list, they realized that because of my having a kidney removed, pretty much was excluded from almost every trial. So
Wow.
It was an extremely frustrating experience, following a diagnosis of a terminal illness and then trying to regain some courage to say, no, we're going to fight this. We're going to figure something out here. We're going to be a part of a solution, to be told, no, you can't, because I didn't have a kidney and I either, it could distort results and so on. So they want that patient, that perfect patient, and I was not it. I still, however, decided to get information on trials because I saw that not every trial necessarily I might be excluded. And it was interesting because eventually I was able to find various sources of some of the trials. Some are presented better than others. Some are just kind of data dumps of lists, and others are a little bit better put together. And of course, more recently, the dashboard that IMALS that was alluded to earlier to make that a little easier. But resources were there to find it. It's just trying to navigate through all of that and figure out what that right trial might be for you. And then, of course, working through your neurologist to do so. I actually happened to last year be part of I was at a conference, and they were actually recruiting for a trial there. And so again, that enthusiasm to go out there and say, sure, let's talk about it. Let's figure this out, and to send me all the information. I went through multiple interviews on the phone. The trial was actually going to be in Orlando, so an hour and a half, 2 hours drive from my home. But it required staying over multiple days each time going to Orlando. And as I've been alluded to before, I can't drive. I can't kind of manage my own. They didn't necessarily have readily available facilities. So even though I could spend the night having somebody, a nurse or somebody, to be able to be there, since my spouse is my caregiver, she works. She couldn't just be spending 3-4 days in Orlando each time for the trial. And just trying to navigate through that, I have to admit, I got increasingly frustrated with just trying to get a response. And once I got the response, understanding that they were going to have, somebody part-time to kind of keep an eye. And I have to admit, I just did not feel comfortable enough that even though I'm sure it probably would have been fine, just going into it, just some apprehension, I guess, of not having, somebody there that would be able to manage and take care of me. So I opted out at that
I think I'm
point.
going to stop you for a second because I think that's really important for everybody to hear. Sometimes it's not right for you, and sometimes it takes you a little while to get there, and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, "I'm just trying to help, dude," But
Yeah,
this is too hard for me this way.
And in all fairness, I'm sure they were trying to accommodate as best as possible. But
Yeah.
the fact that they didn't have that, readily available, it was not a hospital, it's and such. So they had to work around, I guess, to provide that care. That, to be honest, I kind of scratched my head and think, okay, so maybe I'm too far advanced. Maybe the fact that they're not readily equipped, really, to for my situation. That perhaps that was just not the right trial for me. And probably had it been overnight and so on, it probably would have been different. But the fact that it was multiple nights per time, so it just didn't fit, I guess, for my
Troy, who was
situation.
running that study?
I was going to go back and check on my emails to see the name of the company. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but
But
I
it was
can
a
find out.
company, not an academic institution?
That is correct. It was a
Okay.
pharmaceutical. Yeah. Like I said, I think it would have been easier had it been through a hospital where they would have had the infrastructure already, in place. But
this is so great because there are people on this call right now who are part of teams who put together clinical trial protocol and design, and they're hearing from you what was hard for you. So thank you. And, maybe there will be some adaptations, where there can be going forward.
But it didn't damp my spirits in terms of still being part of a solution. So actually just my last ALS clinic visit, my neurologist there again brought up the topic of clinical trials and mentioned that I could be part of this biomarker study that they're undertaking. And it actually, I found that to be actually quite easy, even though it's still a 4-hour drive to Jacksonville. But they coincided with other visits, follow-ups that I needed to do at Mayo anyway. So it wasn't some additional step. It was just, I was already there, and just staying in Jacksonville 1 extra day. Pretty much they, poke and prod all over and take your blood and take spinal fluids. And the nurse wasn't at her best game that day, poor thing. I felt so sorry for her, but it took 4 tries to get that spinal puncture in.
Oh, jeepers.
And even when they numb you, you still feel them sort of moving around trying to find a spot. So that was that part of it wasn't fun, but really and truly at the end of the day, it wasn't that big a hardship. It's a 2-year study, so I'll have to go every 6 months. And of course they track this along with other markers. Obviously they're using the functional surveys. They're looking at your strength, looking at your breathing. So they're looking at not just simply fluids, but they're looking across the board your state. The breathing, strength, and cognitive awareness as well. That was the other criteria. So they basically put all that together, and I will be going every 6 months. So it's a 2-year observation, and they'll track and see how that's going on. But I think as other speakers have discussed, you're driven by this willingness to do whatever it is you need to do to be part of the solution. However, sometimes just whether it be the logistics or whether it just be, you're too far along, whether it's because you had a kidney removed, whatever the case might be, you don't always get to make it through their gating process. And it's like threading a needle. It's kind of the way that I look at it. They're looking for a very specific set of candidates, and because ALS presents itself in so many different ways, the delays in getting diagnosed can sometimes, really work against you because you're further along by the time they diagnose you, so then you don't qualify. So it's this very interesting game to try to thread that needle and be able to be part of, that particular study. And the good news is that I can be in a biomarker study and does not disqualify me from participating in other trials as well that could,
Great point.
that could come up.
So you could, because you're not doing, no one's doing anything to you except drawing your blood, it sounds like every 6 months, you can still participate in an interventional trial if you were eligible for it.
Correct.
Great
And
point.
just to final point, since you guys already brought it up, but I'm also part of that PMP project, and for me as a patient, it's a tremendous benefit because it's the only place really, other than trying to read through doctor notes and so on, to be able to really understand and track your progress. And so at different points, I've tried different supplements and been on and off, and to be able to incorporate some of that and see how that might be changing my progression is so useful. I mean, that dashboard it's extremely helpful just to me as a patient, as well as being helpful for the researchers, of course.
Good. Thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for Troy?
I know Gwen posted in the chat a link to the Mayo Clinic trial, that just trying to verify if this was the biomarker study that you participated in, Troy, which I believe it is. But if you have a chance,
I'll check it later. My arms don't work anymore, so I'll ask my spouse to open the chat and take a look at it.
Troy, mine do, and I get overwhelmed with the technology. Today, so.
I appreciate it. Take your time. It's in there.
Okay, no worries.
There is another question in the chat from Joe Chim.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Joe Chim.
Joachim is his name.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's nothing. I did not have it even close. Joachim, did you want to ask your question out loud? I don't know if Troy is going to have some input, or maybe Carol.
Yeah, so actually, thanks very much. You pronounced my name perfectly. My question was, I was struck by your tale that after you developed ALS, were diagnosed with ALS, you were co-diagnosed with kidney cancer. So that makes me wonder whether the kidney cancer could be causing paraneoplastic syndrome, which basically is an autoimmune response to neuronal components, usually actually more associated with schizophrenia and other neurological diseases, but very often associated also with neurological diseases. And I was wondering whether there's anything known about paraneoplastic syndrome and its association with ALS. So you guys need to tell me, you know all the literature there.
Okay, I can tell you what my doctor relayed to me, and my kidney cancer was discovered. I said it was February of 2018, and I was then diagnosed in June 2018. And early on, they Mayo found the folks at Mayo Clinic found a study that actually saw a relationship between kidney disease and weakness in limbs. More specifically, in the study, they saw not the case study. It was a case study, weakness in the arms, and so that was actually one of the first things that they kind of looked at to see if they could see correlation. According to the case study, once the kidney was removed and cancer was addressed, then strength was restored in the arms. And so following my nephrectomy,
Wow.
they followed they kind of kept up an observation, if you will, just to see if there was any change in my condition, and it didn't. So they effectively ruled out that as a possibility, and of course, eventually, I said, led to the diagnosis. But certainly something that they had looked at and identified case studies of general weakness, not necessarily ALS, but definitely weakness symptoms that for many of us who started with weakness in our limbs with ALS, they were very similar. Just in my case, after dealing with the kidney, the situation did not improve as it had in the case study that they were tracking.
Yeah.
Troy, how's the cancer? Are you cancer free?
Cancer free. I go every 4 months for full CT scans and so on. So all good.
I'm clapping in front of a virtual background. You can't tell.
Well, I look at it as kind of like a cockroach. You really have to, get your shoe, your raid, your whatever to put it down, and kind of like that. So cancer didn't get me. Any other stupid thing I've done in my life didn't get me. So, and hopefully ALS won't get me either if we can get some trials, some success in trials. So.
Yeah, so just to come back to paraneoplastic syndrome, I mean, I know this is a very far left field here, but that is something that is actually treatable using steroid intervention. So has anybody considered doing that, or was that done on you?
I'm having trouble hearing you. Were you able to hear him, Troy?
I got part of it, but didn't get the tail end of the.
Okay, let me repeat that. So I know this is somewhat left field here, okay, and assuming that paraneoplastic syndrome is the cause here, but paraneoplastic syndrome is treatable, often treatable, not always, with high steroid interventions. So what I was wondering was, well, that has been tried on you, glucocorticoid treatment, prednisone, or dexamethasone?
No, and that has not actually come up, oddly enough, in my discussions with my neurologist as a possibility. But no, I have not been given any steroids or anything like that to deal with.
And also in that case, for use of biomarkers, what would be very useful is actually your blood samples, because they might actually be helping to induce, to identify a novel neoantigen that could be a diagnostic marker for this kind of motor neuron disease that might be helpful to narrow down interventional possibilities. Again, this is a loose association based only on your history, and I'm not sure whether it actually applies, but it might be worthwhile considering.
Okay. Well,
It really is quite fascinating. But I am sorry, you have to be so fascinating in that way, Troy. Enough already. All right, I am now going to introduce Eric Chung. Eric, are you there?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hi.
You there, Eric?
Yep, right here.
Great, I see ya. And Eric, I hope you noticed, Mike wants to make sure you know that he's wearing a shirt from one of your businesses.
Yes, yes.
But let me introduce Eric Chun, who is currently, correct, in the tofersen trial at Biogen. BIIB067 is another name for it, and ASO, looking to address SOD1 mutated familial ALS. Eric, would you tell a little bit of your story and your
Sure.
family story?
Yeah, I am SOD1, and my
Can
mom-
people hear him? Is it just me? I'm not sure.
Sorry, can
No.
you hear me? Here, let me get a little closer.
Or maybe, is your mic up all the way, Eric?
Shit. Okay, you know what, hold on.
It's very faint still.
You know, I maybe check my. Is that any better?
It is.
Much better.
Okay. Then my settings, my sound settings here. Okay. I'm SOD1. My mom passed away 12 years ago.
I remember
And her-
your mom.
Her twin sister also passed in the mid 80s, it was 86. And then beyond that, my grandma too in the 70s when I was a baby. So we've lived with it, you know, my whole life, and always, you know, it's such a dark cloud to live under as a family. And sorry, my voice has been a little rough lately. We were, you know, when my mom was diagnosed, there were still no real therapies out there except Rizol, any kind of drugs available. So, you know, when she passed, maybe a few years before she passed, I decided to get tested, see whether or not I had the gene. And that was kind of a big decision. And, you know, it's always difficult to want to know, you know, but at the time I was like, I just really want to find out the possibility that I don't have it, you know. And sure enough, I did have the gene, and that was pretty devastating. It was the first time in my life I had actually felt the fear of ALS, you know, the prospect. So, you know, in the intervening years, I kind of ignored the whole thing and tried to really put it out of my whole consciousness and just, you know, be positive, and, you know, you'll never experience it. Well, a couple years ago, I started feeling the fasciculations, you know, my right arm. So it's one of those things, like, I knew right away. You know, I know a lot of people who have sporadic ALS, they just don't know what's going on. Like you, Troy, it took 11 months. But I knew, and actually didn't want to admit it to myself. So I waited maybe even 2-3 months before I told my wife, you know, what was going on. She actually kind of figured it out from seeing the fasciculations. And then we went in for diagnosis, and I wasn't experiencing any weakness quite until that point. And but they did do the, you know, the resistance testing, and they could see the fasciculations, and so we were able to pretty much diagnose it at that time. My neurologist here, so I live in Honolulu, actually it's kind of old school. He wasn't very progressive about looking for help and new treatments. And actually that whole time I had been trying to look and research, and I wasn't very good at finding anything. So I was very despondent and feeling pretty hopeless. But my wonderful wife here and her mom, they did some research, and they got me a appointment at Cedars-Sinai in LA, where I saw Dr. Balo, who's wonderful.
Yep.
And he, so, it's just the whole experience there was completely different. And we have a huge ALS clinic, and they were actually pointed me towards the Biogen study. And they knew about Neuron as well, but they but the tofersen study is targeted at SOD1, at silencing the gene expression. So it was they said that's the perfect one for you, and I am so fortunate that the timing was right, and I was in the right age group, and I was in the beginning of my progression. And sorry, it sounds terrible. I sound like I'm gonna cry.
Mhm. I always sound like I'm gonna cry because I usually am gonna cry.
Okay.
So I'm with you.
So I applied, and I immediately was accepted. At the time, even though I'm considered slow progression in the SOD realm, they're not taking slow progressors now, but they were at the time. So luckily that was it. I got in. My experience was actually, I know Sandy, I know you had that 3-month period. I didn't know about anything like that. They got me in right away. And within a few months, I was in the phase 3. I think they had a 1/3 placebo study. So I had 2/3 chance of getting the medicine. And then that lasted for 6 months. So from May to October, I was in the double-blind study. And then Biogen is extremely generous, and they actually have an extension. So I'm still in that extension. So starting this past November, I've been getting treated with the actual drug, tofersen.
Yay.
Yeah. And it's a once a month. It is pretty rough. It is a spinal injection. So once a month, I fly to San Diego. It's at UCSD. I fly there, and I spend one morning in their clinic, and I go through some questionnaires, this and that, and then some strength testing, and then we do the interthecal
Yeah.
injection.
And will you describe for people what that's like, if you don't mind, Eric?
Sure. It's scary, but it's more scary than it is painful. It's really it's fairly quick. They numb the area. I'm totally conscious at the time, of course, and so that's really the most painful part, is the prick of the needle, the anesthetic, and then they basically they draw. I think, how much do they draw? Anyway, they draw spinal fluid, and then they re-inject. They re-inject with the drug, and replace it. And I was a little concerned. I wonder, I asked them what, pulling my spinal fluid, is that dangerous? And they reassured me that I guess spinal fluid it replaces itself 3 times a day or something. So anyway, it was scary, but it's not actually. It's pretty painless. It takes about 20 minutes, and actually they used to require an overnight stay, but now it's just like an hour rest in the clinic, and then I'm off on my way. There are some symptoms from it, but mine are pretty minor. Like Sandy said, sometimes you get a headache. My main symptom is just some leg aching for the first couple of days, but like, it's not super painful, and I'll take some Advil and usually fine. It does require a lot of rest for the next week. You know, I get pretty out of it. Tired, tired. But for me,
Well, on top of going through that, you're also flying back and forth, and
yeah,
right. I mean,
the travel
it's a
is
lot of work.
So we've kind of worked it out, and Biogen, like I said, is super generous, and they actually pay for the flights. I mean, it's pretty amazing what they have offered in this trial.
That's wonderful.
Especially now that you hear about the other trials, and the extension is a 4-year program. So I'm luckily able to do this. I started in November, so I'll go for the next 3.5 years on the drug.
So how frequent is it again, did you say? So how often will you go back and forth for the next 4 years?
Every 4 weeks.
Every 4 weeks.
Wow.
Well,
So,
I would say it'd be time to move, except for the view behind you and the fact that I just got a text saying, can you hear the ocean waves from his computer?
actually, you can't, but you might hear some roosters. I'm in the valley. No, we did consider that, trying to relocate, but with, we have the system pretty down now, so it's not too bad. And unfortunately, with COVID, and Hawaii has a 2-week quarantine, so every time I come back, I'm pretty much locked down for 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Which means not visiting with my kids, and until I'm out. And
yeah.
It's like I live half my life in quarantine.
I mean, you literally do live half your life in quarantine.
Yes.
That too is an incredible sacrifice. Thank you so much.
No, I'm happy to do it. I'm just really feel blessed to be a part of this. And,
wow.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Allison asked in the chat if you could share a little bit about what your progression has been like kind of before you started the trial, and then kind of since you've been on open label extension, and
Sure.
kind of how your symptoms have
been. When I started the trial, I was just starting to lose strength in my right arm, and I had use of my hand, but I couldn't lift this arm on my own. Going through, so one of the questions was do I think I was on placebo or not? And of course I'm not sure still, but I have the feeling I was. It was progressing pretty good through that time. It lost full strength in the arm. And then when I started in November on the extension, it seemed to really start plateauing. I've been full function in my legs and left arm. The main symptoms I've been experiencing mainly throughout are like heavy cramping, like abdominal cramping, little Charlie horses, neck cramps, stuff like that, but not really any strength loss. And that lasted, I plateaued pretty much through until about, say, a month or two ago. I started developing a little loss of strength in this arm. So I can lift it here, but I can't like lift a plate and put it up in my cabinet. And that's kind of how this arm began. So, that's some more progression recently. So I don't know. I think that I have to say it's hard to judge. All of us, it's hard to judge like how much we're progressing and what's working. But I know I can compare it to my mom's progression, and it's definitely significantly slower than what.
Good.
Yeah.
Your mom was a wonderful artist, as I remember.
Yeah, she's a great person, very talented lady.
Are there any other questions for Eric?
I just wanted to comment that I am in the Biogen trial for C9,
Oh,
Awesome.
and it has helped without a doubt.
okay.
That is news I like, Lisa.
Lisa, where are you being treated?
At Stanford,
Stanford.
yes, and they're wonderful.
When did you start, Lisa?
I started a year ago, August,
Okay.
and it was 50-50 for me, but it did not take long for me to tell that I was getting help. So even though we cannot prove I was getting the drug, I really felt like I was. And my scores went up.
Wonderful.
And how long is it, Lisa? Are you done?
I finished in January, but I'm just started the open label extension.
Awesome.
And I'm hoping for the best.
Yes.
Well, for those of you who may not have attended our leadership weekend last year, Lisa can kick her leg over her head. Just so you know. Just so you know. So let's have the ASO at Biogen help you to always be able to do that, Lisa.
Thank you.
Any questions for Eric or Lisa? All right, we're gonna, yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I have C9 ORF, and it's good to know that Biogen actually does help.
Yes.
And it helped you, Eric, too?
Yeah.
That's good to know. All right, so I'm going to look it up. Thank you.
Do best of luck to you.
Susan, let us know if any of us can help you. Email any of us. We'll help you walk through the science if you want.
Yeah, I would need that because the weakness is progressing and I'd like to stop.
Great. All of our emails are in the chat and you'll hear from one of us in the next couple of days anyway.
Thank you.
And I have to say,
Could I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Well, both of you are pretty amazing to do what you're doing, but I wondered, I know, Eric, you said yours was the familial kind. Is that true for you too, Lisa?
Absolutely. Although
okay.
I did not know that when I was first diagnosed. I volunteered for a study and they tested me, and I was very surprised to find out it was familial. Since then, however, 3 of my siblings have been diagnosed. So it's definitely in the family.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, so I am also in the Biogen C9 trial down here in Miami, Florida. I'm in Tampa, but I travel back and forth to Miami. I feel that it is helping me as well. So thank you for sharing because I don't know any of the other participants and I was wondering, is it helping everybody? Because I'll be on my 4th dose Wednesday and I don't know if I'm getting the meds or placebo. It's 3 out of 4 from my cohort. But I do feel like an improvement. My only symptom or my only weakness is in my right hand. And so it's kind of stopped at that, which is positive, I'm hoping, because of the medicine that I'm getting, if I'm getting it. But thank you for sharing that. But so you were on it for a certain amount of time how long before you noticed improvement?
I think I noticed improvement in my speech within about 6 weeks, but I actually saw improvement in my dancing at about 2 months.
That's awesome news. And I'm so glad for you. I have a long family history as well. My mother at 50, my aunt at 45, 2 uncles and a grandfather. It's affected our family. And I'm the first in our family of the grandkids to develop symptoms. And
How old
they're
are
all
you?
44.
Okay. You look
Yeah,
about
they all
22,
died in their
so.
yeah, they all died in their late 40s. But my whole family is ecstatic because I'm doing this, and they're so hopeful that whatever this tofersen medicine is, that it's gonna help our family, with our specific C9 gene.
Yes.
Yeah.
And any of you, Eric, Lisa, all of you guys, if you are interested in, if you want to email whichever one of us at TDI that you know and say, you may share my contact information with, Susan or whoever, we will happily help put you guys in touch if you want to talk further.
Yes, I would like that.
We just do need your permission, or else like the nonprofits come down and bonk us on the head. So just let us cross that T if you don't mind.
I'd be happy to. It's kind of a lonely thing going through the trial, and you want to speak to other patients so badly.
Yeah.
So this is.
Yeah, we're happy to connect you. I'm so glad you guys
alone.
are all on. I love this conversation.
Christina.
And here it's going to continue. Wait till you meet the next person. Jay, are you ready?
Oh.
Jay Payne?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
All right, there you are. Jay, as we, have all of these conversations about familial ALS, we had a, what a conversation you never wanted to join, Jay.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But your family, I know your family as well, and it's quite a story. Could you share yours and then talk about your participation in trial? And also, if you could also talk about, I know there were some decisions you made not to participate in trials. I'd love people to be able to hear all of that, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, another sad one. Family, we've had over 20 paths. Currently, there are 3 of us that are going through it. Obviously, it's a horrible story. Here we are. Let's see where we can go though. So I was diagnosed 12 years ago. So obviously a very slow progressor, and not really sure why, but there's a couple of things that may be contributing. When I was diagnosed in 2008, I went to an ALS TDI informational thing that they had here in Chicago. It was actually before I was technically diagnosed, but I knew. And I got to hear Sean Scott speak, who is a former president of
With
ALS
an SOD
TDI.
mutation.
Absolutely. And he is the one that mentioned pyrimethamine before I was even diagnosed. So I followed up, and I was able to go to New York for the study. And it was pretty much, I was able to go out there and back in one day. Nothing was paid for, but I had a lot of friends that donated miles and so forth, and really wasn't too bad. So pyrimethamine, they just found has a side effect of lowering the amounts of SOD1. And they found out that for me, it was lowering it by 18%. Actually, my neurologist in Chicago did a draw before and did one after. And because of that, she prescribed it off-label for me. So I have been on it since 2008, 2009. Little side note, interesting story. Pyrimethamine is also known as Daraprim. And I don't know if any of you guys remember Martin Shrekley, maybe? The Pharma Bureau?
We know him.
From years ago. Yeah, so the medicine that went from $13 a pill to $750 is what I'm on.
Oh, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Now I know what you're talking about. And hi, Dan Kraut, by the way. Whoa, Jay.
So that was insane.
How did you handle that?
Well, for the first 3 or 4 years, it was just I don't know, maybe $1,200 through insurance, or for them. I didn't pay the $1,200 a month. Then when it got jacked up, I was on it for a while, but we were eventually able to move to a compounding pharmacy, and I now get it for $150 a month out of pocket. So, you know, sure beats the heck out of what it was.
And you feel fairly confident that it is well formulated?
I do. So, you know, that went pretty well. Like I said, I've been on it. My sister actually participated in the study with me. She did not stay on it afterwards because the side effects really bothered her. And she passed within 4 or 5 years. Is it related to the pyrimethamine? I don't know. But it's one of those things where it's not hurting me, so I'm not going to give it up. Obviously, you know, I'm still doing okay. By okay, I mean, I'm in a wheelchair full time, have very limited use of my hands. I have also participated in a study out at Johns Hopkins, or did a skin biopsy. And it was a one-time thing. And my wife and I just decided, hey, we've never been to Baltimore. They're going to pay for it. Let's go. And, you know, we did that. And then they used that evidently for some in vitro studies. And I also did phase 1 of the tofersen. Geez, how long? 7, 8 years ago, somewhere in there. I had to go off with the pyrimethamine to do that. But I did that for, well, it was a one-time thing, you know.
How long did you have to go off? What was the washout? Do you remember, Jay?
They only made me do it a month.
Okay. And at this point, you've had ALS for a very long time. You're clearly very good at it, I'm sorry to say, or happy to say, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So most trials you're likely ineligible for at this point anyway. But
Correct.
if you were, you would have to go off the pyrimethamine again.
Right.
Okay. Just making that clear to people so that everybody understands, you know, some of the exclusion parameters that we talked about in the last town hall, and how, you know, it's confounding factors, right? They wouldn't necessarily be able to know if any change in Jay's progression was coming from pyrimethamine or whatever it was that they were testing.
And the other one I was just going to share was I considered trying to get into the phase 3 for tofersen. The problem is it's 5 hours away. And for me and my condition, it's not just hey, let's drive down or fly down. It's easy to do. I require a lot of assistance. And that would have been, definitely my wife, possibly somebody else, and it would have been 3 days for each trip. By the time we get there the day of, and then coming back the following day, I just don't see how I could do it any other way. And my breathing at that time was right on the borderline of what they were accepting. And so in the end, I just decided, it just wasn't worth it because it was going to be 8 or 9 trips. So I didn't do it, but I do have a family member that recently got into it, so I'm very excited. Not excited that, she has to do it, but excited that there's something out there that, is has expanded access. So, once she gets done with the trial part, she's got it for 4 years. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, which is not a surprise to me and certainly not one to Sandy, that it is the expanded access that is particularly, appealing to a lot of people to be able to get into a
Absolutely.
trial that offers you that opportunity. That's understandable. And Jay, what were the side effects that your sister had from the pyrimethamine? Do you still have any? And do you still, what do you think? What's kept you around all this time, driving everybody crazy?
I have never had any side effects. For my sister, it was just a general feeling of just feeling like crap. And that was even at the lower dosages, because we went up to 100, but even at like 25 and 50, it was not agreeing with her. So, she didn't continue. And again, I don't know if the difference in our progression is anything to do with that. Within my family, I had a brother that was diagnosed at like the age of 30, and he was gone within a year.
Oh, my Lord.
But other relatives have been 4 or 5 years. I had another uncle that was 10. So we're just kind of all over the board.
Jay, or anybody else who's talked, other than Brainstorm, because I know that will be the universal answer, were there trials along the way that you wished you could have gotten into yet couldn't, and what were they?
Personally, there's one right now in Australia, the copper ATSM.
Okay.
I think that's incredibly intriguing for anybody with ALS, but particularly those with SOD1.
Yep. Okay. And what's keeping you from participating, aside from the fact that you've had ALS since 2008, is that it's in Australia?
Australia, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
those are two biggies.
I had inquired about that trial as well before I started with Biogen, and they actually asked them, and they said no, they wouldn't take me. So.
Eric, can you hit your settings again and repeat that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had actually inquired about that with them before I started with Biogen, and they rejected me. So that was
Okay.
very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. I'm glad that everybody's aware of that work. Erin, you look like you have a question from someone.
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of chat in the Zoom chat, and I think that after hearing about the tofersen study and the Biogen studies that are geared towards specific genetic mutations, and they seem to be pretty promising based on the speakers, people are asking if Biogen has any other opportunities for people that do not carry a genetic mutation and for the sporadic form of ALS. Could you speak to that?
There is a phase 1-ish. Biogen does some really great patient-centric trial design where the trials are done more in cohorts than in what we think of as traditional phases. So I'm going to use the kind of ish at the end. There is a phase 1-ish for a sporadic opportunity at Biogen right now. And if anybody would like to, our help in finding that and talking about it, we're happy to do that. The type of drug that, or the delivery at least, an ASO, an antisense oligonucleotide, and that's about as smart as I get that I'm able to pronounce it. But it would be similar to a gene therapy where traditionally we have thought, we meaning people far smarter than I am who aren't going to yell at me for saying we because they're generous, have thought that ASOs were particularly relevant in mutated forms of disease with identified mutations, or in C9's case, expanded repeats. So I think it's early, that's why it's earlier work to look at ASOs in sporadic ALS.
Thanks for addressing that.
Any other questions for anybody?
They did, when I asked the researchers there about that, they mentioned it, and they said it's an infusion, so it's a much less intrusive trial.
Well, that's appealing, right?
But just an IV, I guess.
I have a question for Jay. Jay, it's Terry Handler. You know,
Yes.
12 years of ALS. Thank you again for sharing this whole story, and I know parts of your family. I just was wondering, with the 12 years, have you been on Riluzole as well as Radicava?
No, I did Riluzole for maybe 4 years. But when you just look at the data, I just didn't feel like there was enough there for me to stay on it. So I don't think it's had a negative effect to, you know, being off of it.
And
Now, how about, I know Sandy couldn't be on Radicava if you brainstorm, you know, that you couldn't be on Radicava and participate in brainstorm. How about Riluzole and Radicava for any of the other people that have spoken here today?
This is Sherry. I'm on Riluzole. Again, I really wasn't positive about it, but my family, my kids and my husband just said, if it's not going to hurt, just do it. I recently revisited going on Radicava after my drug trial ended, because again, I was like, what can I do? And just determined with my doctor at U of M that it just probably wasn't worth it with how invasive it is. So for now, I'm not going to go that route.
This is Troy. Got a similar thing to report. I'm on Riluzole. I discussed with the neurologist on Radicava, and we decided that it probably wasn't the cost benefit wasn't there. So I skipped that. I'm not sure Riluzole is doing any better, but I think I take it more for my own psychological impact of feeling like I'm doing something.
Yeah, I get that too.
So, because, you know, with my luck, I stopped taking it, and of course, then something happened. So,
Yeah, you got to be careful. We got to put you in, like, you know, bubble wrap.
yeah.
Honestly. And I guess, you know, I'd also love to, as we just have a few minutes left, see if there's any other piece of advice or insight that any of you want to offer with everybody else who's on the call about participating in a trial. Kind of your parting notes to the group. Troy, you want to keep going?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that in my experience is separating me as an individual who would be willing to take anything, because at the end of the day, you know, given the alternative, it's not any worse, and you have at least an upside. But I also have to consider that it's not just me going through it. It's my caregivers. It's the impact of my family. It's not just, you know,
Great
me.
point.
And while they're, cheering for me all the way through, when you look at the logistics behind it, and understanding how that might affect everybody else who now has to change their schedule or drive around or stay or taking time off from work, whatever those things are. So it does extend just beyond you. So it's always good to make sure you discuss with your caregiver and your family, make sure that they're also on board, not just simply in rooting for you, which is great and helps, but also to cover the logistics, whether that is somebody staying out to babysit, whether that's something that can drive you, or whatever the case might be based on each person's particular situation. So make sure that aside from your neurologist, you expand your conversation around your general support structure.
It's great advice, because listening to you all, like I'm really struck, Eric, by, there's ALS, and then on top of it, there's a freaking pandemic, and you truly do have to spend half your life in isolation, and you have kids. Those are big decisions, Troy. You're right. And they have to be honest with you all too, because you don't want to get halfway in and have somebody resenting the help that they've offered and back out. So it needs to be honest conversation. Eric, how about any other thoughts?
I just got to really keep doing your research, and I think connecting to this crowd here and is really important. I feel really it's important because it is an isolating disease, and we need to be able to talk to each other about it. So that's one of the biggest things is, every other person that I've talked to has really given me better perspective and hope. So staying connected, and that we can understand this is huge for me talking to you all, because I've been really curious about all these other trials, really, and what people are doing.
Good. I'm glad. I hope this was what you hoped to sense and learn and feel and see and meet and all of that. Because you're right, it is an isolating disease, and on top of that, to have COVID too, it's a double down. So we want everybody to be able to stay connected, like you said.
Yeah, and reach out to your community, because I've really had to do that, and thankfully I've had a lot of help. So monetarily and people chipping in. So.
Sherry, Jay, Sandy, anything else you want to say?
I think, I agree, just staying connected. I'm lucky living where I do in Michigan. We have a foundation that I can go to, a support group. They'll bring me meals. There's a loan closet. I have a lot of support in West Michigan. And that is huge for me to keep up my courage and to stay positive. I'm brought to tears frequently with the amount of support that I receive. So I just agree. And even to be involved in this today was such an honor. I've learned so much. It was just really great. So thank you for having me.
Jeepers Creepers, thank you.
Carol, this is Nicole San Martino. I'm with the Les Turner ALS Foundation here in
Hi,
Skokie,
Nicole.
Illinois. Hi, just right outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
And, I'm new to the organization, but not new to the ALS space. And I just want to thank you for hosting this call. I think this was so much bigger than what the title says, so much bigger than what it's like to be participating in clinical trials. This was about resilience and continuing to build that muscle of resilience, and how as a community we help each other do that. So thank you so much for having this, and it's just really an honor to be in this space.
Oh, you're right, and that's such a great point, and I love thinking of it as a muscle that they do retain. You cannot atrophy resilience.
Yes. such an honor. And I know Eric, I used to work for the ALS Association in Chicago, and I remember I've seen your mother's art up close and personal. I don't know if she donated or what it was, but it was just unbelievable. And then I did not know that you were then diagnosed later on. So it's just really great to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, her art inspires a lot of people.
Sure does. Thank you.
She was lovely.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Please do.
Sandy mentioned, making sure that, we as patients advocate for ourselves. That means when you learn things from others and you go into your doctor, you can bring these things up, things that may help you, trials that, you want them to know more about. And obviously IMALS is doing a lot right now to really help us as patients. But, I've been through 4 doctors. I left one of them, not because of the doctor, she was awesome, just the clinic I was at. But for each one of the next 3, quite frankly, they see ALS patients, twice a month, maybe for half a day. So do you think that's where they're putting their focus? They are not. We have to advocate for ourselves. We've got to learn. We have to go to them with the things that we want and need. That's it.
It's huge. That's huge. And you're right. And, I commit to help anybody be able to do that as best that I can. But you're right. I mean, clinicians are incredibly wonderful people, and they're dealing with very, very full schedules. And often they know about the research that they are a clinical site for, but not necessarily all of it. So we are trying as a community, ALS TDI, IMALS, we're all trying to make all of this information more accessible and start conversations like this so that you guys know a hell of a lot more about this than I do. So thank you for educating me and everybody else here today.
Carol, I'd like to just speak up. My name is Dr. Selva. I'm a neuromuscular specialist and investigator at Woodland Research in Arkansas. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and our ALS support group is shut down on account of COVID. But so we really are having trouble getting the word out to ALS patients. We have, for example, the Mitsubishi oral edaravone study. It's phase 3. It's oral. It is everybody. It's open label. Everybody gets a drug. We have a van. We'd be glad to go out and pick people up and bring them to visits. We can't get anybody to talk to. We can't. Nobody knows that we exist. So,
Doctor, can you? My email is in the chat. Will you send me all of the information, including, like you said, that you can help with van service? I don't know what we can do, but I can certainly make sure that the information about it on our website is accurate and comprehensive, and we'll do what we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you. That's what we don't want to have happen, right? We want to enroll these as quickly as we can. All right, with that, everybody, I can't thank you enough. There are a lot of people on here, and it makes me feel humbled that all of you would choose to spend these 2 hours with all of us together and with me in this little box.
Keep up the good work, Carol. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. What are you saying, Dan?
Oh, I said keep up the good work.
Oh, you bet. How you doing, bud?
Not bad. Hanging in there.
Okay.
Work from home.
We're here to help. Thank you for this. There's so much that everybody can learn from each other. My hope in this is that there are some people on the line, in the call, on the Zoom, who were considering a clinical trial and might have been a little bit nervous about it and feel now that some of their questions are answered and they can approach the opportunity with more confidence. And any help that our team can provide in directing you to resources or information we will happily do that. Remember, give us real stuff in the feedback, in the survey. We want to know, we want to help, give us ideas. And thank you, and happy Labor Day, everybody.
Thank you, Carol.
You bet,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks all. Thanks to our speakers again, Jeepers. Thank you all so much. I am so grateful to you for telling your story. And thank you to our sponsors, Biogen, Alexion, and Orphazyme. We are grateful that you are in the ALS space trying to help all of these incredible freaking people who are on this call.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Carol.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Please reach out.
Thank you, Carol.
If you can do anything. Bye.